There is something about Texas in the 1980s that people who lived through it will never forget. The oil boom, the swagger, the sense that everything was bigger and better. If you lived there then, you know exactly what made that decade so special. This was a time when Texas was booming. Oil money was flowing until it was not. The television show Dallas made the whole world think they knew what Texas was about. The Cowboys were America's team. Texas pride reached levels that made the rest of the country roll their eyes. This was the decade that gave us urban cowboy, the oil bust, exploding suburbs, and a confidence that only Texans could pull off. The economy went from boom to disaster and back again. But through it all, Texas remained Texas, loud, proud, and convinced it was the best place on earth. Living in Texas meant being part of something that felt larger than life. Let's walk through what daily life actually felt like during that unforgettable decade. Some of this might bring back memories. Some of it might explain why Texans still talk about the 1980s. Let's step into that world. Living in Texas in the 1980s meant dealing with weather that could kill you and space that went on forever. The heat was not just hot, it was oppressive. Summer temperatures regularly hit triple digits, and air conditioning was not a luxury, it was survival. Houses were built around keeping cool. Central air ran constantly from May through September. Electric bills in summer were staggering, but nobody questioned it. You either had air conditioning or you suffered. The architecture reflected the climate and the oil money. In the suburbs spreading across Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio, new subdivisions featured brick ranch houses with massive yards. These were not the compact California homes. Texas houses were big because land was cheap, and Texans believed bigger was better. Inside, the aesthetic was exactly what you would expect from the 1980s. Mauve and teal were everywhere. Brass fixtures dominated bathrooms and kitchens. Ceiling fans spun in every room because even with air conditioning, the heat demanded circulation. Many homes, especially those built with oil money, featured wet bars in the living room or den. These were not just for show. Texans entertained at home, and a proper wet bar with mirrored backing and brass fixtures was essential. The den was the heart of the home, paneled in wood with comfortable recliners positioned toward the television. This was where families gathered to watch Dallas on Friday nights, where men watched Cowboys games on Sundays, and where kids played Atari. Pickup trucks defined Texas roads in the 1980s more than any other vehicle. Ford F-150s, Chevy Silverados, and Dodge Rams were everywhere. Pickup trucks were status symbols, daily drivers, and expressions of Texas identity. A man might wear a suit to his office job, and he drove a pickup truck, the bigger the better. Extended cabs and full beds were common. Many trucks had toolboxes in the back, even if they never hauled anything more than groceries. Gun racks in the back window were common, often displaying rifles. This was normal in Texas. Nobody thought twice about it. Bumper stickers proclaimed Texas pride. The slogan "Don't Mess with Texas" started as an anti-littering campaign in 1986, and it immediately became a statement of identity. Other stickers featured the Texas flag, oil derricks, or declarations that Texas could secede anytime it wanted. The truck culture extended to customization. Lift kits raised trucks higher off the ground. Oversized tires, custom paint jobs, and elaborate sound systems turned trucks into personal statements. Driving in Texas meant distances that people from other states could not comprehend. Dallas to Houston was a common drive, nearly 4 hours of straight highway through flat landscape. San Antonio to El Paso could take 8 hours, and you never left Texas. Texans thought nothing of driving 2 hours for dinner or to watch a high school football game. The car was where Texans spent significant time. The radio played country music. Willie Nelson, George Strait, and Alabama dominated. Country music was not just popular in Texas, it was the soundtrack. Even people who claimed they did not like country knew every word to songs playing in trucks and on radio stations across the state. The oil industry defined Texas in the 1980s, both the boom and the devastating bust. In the early 1980s, oil prices were high and money flowed through Texas like never before. Houston was the energy capital of the world. Office towers were rising downtown. Oil executives made fortunes. Ordinary workers in the oil fields and refineries made excellent money. The boom created a sense of invincibility. Texas was rich, growing, and unstoppable. People moved to Texas from across the country chasing oil money. Real estate prices soared. Development spread across former ranch land. Shopping malls opened. Restaurants thrived. Luxury car dealerships could not keep up with demand. Then oil prices collapsed. By 1986, crude oil dropped from over $30 a barrel to under $10. The Texas economy crashed. Houston was hit hardest. Offices sat empty. For lease signs covered buildings. Unemployment spiked. People who had moved to Texas for opportunity were leaving just as fast. Foreclosures were rampant. People walked away from houses worth less than their mortgages. Banks failed. The swagger and confidence evaporated. The bust was devastating, but it was also a defining moment. Texans who lived through it developed a different kind of toughness. The boom had been about excess. The bust taught resilience. By the late 1980s, the economy was recovering, but it would never be quite the same as those early boom years. Before we continue with the culture and identity that made Texas so distinctive, if you are enjoying this look back at how Texans really lived and want to explore more decades and places, consider subscribing. There are so many more stories about how Americans built the life we know today. Dallas, the television show, shaped how the world saw Texas and how Texans saw themselves. The show premiered in 1978, but it dominated the 1980s. JR, in his Stetson hat, scheming and manipulating, became the image of the Texas oil man. The show depicted wealth, power, corruption, and family drama set against ranches and oil derricks. The question who shot JR in 1980 became a phenomenon. The entire country was talking about it. In Texas, people watched religiously. Some Texans embraced the image. Others resented being seen as nothing but oil barons and scheming businessmen. But everyone watched. The show made Dallas famous worldwide. Tourists came looking for South Fork Ranch. The opening credits with the Dallas skyline became iconic. The show reinforced stereotypes, but it also made Texas glamorous. Cowboy hats and boots became fashionable even among people who had never been near a ranch. Football in Texas during the 1980s was religion, and high school football was the most important level. Friday night lights were not just a phrase, they were a way of life. Entire towns shut down for high school football games. Stadiums held 10,000 people or more. Communities invested millions in facilities. Players were celebrities. Quarterbacks and running backs had their names in the local paper every week. Being a football player meant status, respect, and pressure. The culture around football was intense. Practice started in the brutal August heat. There were 2-a-day practices in 100-degree weather. Coaches ruled with absolute authority. Playing football was about toughness, discipline, and representing your town. College football mattered too. The University of Texas, Texas. A&M and other schools had massive followings. Rivalries were serious. The Texas Longhorns versus the Oklahoma Sooners was an annual event that divided the state and split families over allegiance. The Dallas Cowboys remained America's team throughout the 1980s. Even though the team struggled in the mid-decade after success in the 1970s, Cowboys fans remained loyal and loud. Wearing a Cowboys jersey was a statement of Texas pride. Shopping in Texas during the 1980s meant the mall, and Texas malls were enormous. The Galleria in Houston opened in 1970, but reached its peak in the 1980s. The mall had an ice skating rink in the center, surrounded by multiple levels of stores. Neiman Marcus anchored one end, representing Texas oil money and luxury. Foley's, Dillard's, and other department stores filled the mall. Teenagers spent entire weekends at the mall. These were social spaces where kids hung out, saw friends, and occasionally bought something. Food courts served Orange Julius, Sbarro Pizza, and Chick-fil-A. The mall was air-conditioned, safe, and the center of suburban social life. Western wear stores were everywhere in Texas. Sheplers and other chains sold boots, hats, and pearl snap shirts. Even people who never rode a horse owned cowboy boots. Boots were formal wear in Texas. Men wore them with suits. Women wore them with dresses. Getting fitted for boots was a rite of passage. Tex-Mex food was daily life in Texas during the 1980s. This was not Mexican food, it was Texas Mexican food, distinct and beloved. Enchiladas, tacos, fajitas, and queso were standard. Every town had Mexican restaurants where families went weekly. Chips and salsa appeared on the table immediately. Margaritas were the drink, frozen or on the rocks. Tex-Mex restaurants had a specific atmosphere, colorful decor, booths with vinyl seats, and waitresses who knew regular customers by name. Barbecue was the other essential Texas food. Brisket smoked for hours over wood, with ribs, sausage, and sides like potato salad and coleslaw. Barbecue joints were often simple buildings, sometimes just shacks, where the focus was entirely on the meat. Debates over which barbecue was best could get heated. Central Texas style and East Texas style, different regions had different approaches, and people were passionate. Whataburger was a Texas institution. The orange and white striped buildings were everywhere. The burgers were big. The restaurant was open 24 hours, and Texans were fiercely loyal. Eating Whataburger late at night after a football game or a night out was a Texas tradition. What defined Texas in the 1980s was identity. Texans believed their state was special, better, and worth bragging about. The oil boom created wealth and confidence. The bust created humility and resilience. Through both, Texas pride never wavered. This was a decade of big hair, big trucks, and big attitudes. It was high school football under Friday night lights and families gathering for Tex-Mex dinners. It was watching Dallas and believing Texas was the center of everything. The economy crashed and recovered. People struggled and adapted. But the sense of being Texan, of being part of something bigger and bolder, remained constant. For those who lived in Texas during the 1980s, it was a time of excess and challenge, of growth and change, but always of pride. The traffic was getting worse in the cities. The suburbs were spreading, but Texas still felt wide open and full of possibility. For those with memories of this remarkable era in the Lone Star State, there is always more history to explore.